My name's Amata, and in this Red Gaming Tech video I am here with the latest from the tech world in the last 24 or so hours as one piece of gaming news that has earned its right to be here because, well, it's got me hyped. Valid enough reason for you? Anyway, what do I have for you today? Well, we have the full lineup of AMD Ryzen 2000 series prices being listed on Amazon, and they're a touch cheaper than we previously expected. We also have a Etherium miner from Bitmain, and we also have some news regarding the GeForce GT 1030, as well as a leak for an Asus X470 Fatality gaming motherboard, as well as an announcement from Gigabyte for a Coffee Lake platform. And the non-tech item is, you've probably guessed what it is, the Spyro remake is happening. Yes! Before we get to that though, let's start things off with Ryzen. So of course, Ryzen 2000 is going to be out in just a couple of weeks on April the 19th to be exact. In fact, 2 weeks to the very day, which is pretty damn cool. And we have a listing on Amazon for the 2600, 2600X, 2700 and 2700X, and a bunch of coolers and stuff as well. And it's a bit cheaper than we previously thought in earlier reports. So what are the prices actually, I hear you ask? So let's start from the bottom, shall we, as we have the 2600 with the Wraith cooler being $199, the Ryzen 5 2600X again with the cooler, and sorry, the Wraith Spire. The previous one was the Wraith Stealth, and this one is going to be $229, and the Ryzen 7 2700 is going to be $299 with the Wraith Spire LED cooler, and the 2700X is going to be $329 with the Wraith Prism. So for the top of the line one, which of course is the 2700X, it's a saving of $30 as it was previously reported to be priced at $369. We also saw a cheaper listing for the 2600X, which was reportedly going to be $249, but the Amazon listing shows it will have a price of $229. So on both of these, the 2700X, sorry, the X variant is only $30 more expensive than its non-X variant, so most people are probably going to splurge for that extra horsepower, because, you know, the 2700X is $329, the 2700 is $299. If it was me and I'm already spending $300, what's an extra $30, assuming I have that spare, of course. For a lot of people, $30 is a lot of money, but you could argue if you're saving up, it's not that much more to save up for a little bit of extra oomph, or you could obviously save a bit of money and still get a pretty damn good processor at the end of it. So definitely nice to see them being cheaper than expected. That's always a nice surprise. However, let's move on to Bitmain. Now, of course, there's been talk for a while now that we're going to be seeing a ASIC miner for Ethereum. Now we have one announced from Bitmain, the Antminer E3, which again has been purpose-built for mining Ethereum. So you might say rather, how much is it? It's $800. But if you're serious about mining, you'll probably understand why when you compare it to, say, the RX 580, as the ASIC draws about 800 watts of power, pretty crazy, but also offers a hash rate of 180 mHz. And again, comparing it to the 580, only draws about 30 and draws around 200 watts at typical mining load. So hopefully the release of these ASICs will help cool things off a little when it comes to the demand on gaming GPUs. Of course, we've seen prices skyrocket as people have been struggling to keep up with demand as cryptocurrency has exploded in popularity. Now, given the price of this particular one, I don't think all of a sudden miners are going to flock to these, because obviously you could probably still find a graphics card on, say, second-hand market for cheaper than this, but miners themselves have driven prices up. So obviously if they're getting more cards, or you've got a new person who wants to try out mining, this is actually probably going to be a better sell for them, because obviously it's actually designed for what they want to do, and it's the price. That's what it is. It isn't a 580, for example, that's been driven up in price due to the scarcity of the 580. So hopefully we'll see GPU prices start to come down as these ASICs become more into the market and miners start to get their hands on them, and perhaps we'll see a few graphics cards hit the second-hand market as they are sold to make room for stuff like this. And speaking of graphics cards, let's move on to Nvidia and the GeForce GT 1030. You have to have pity for the poor low-end graphics cards as it cries lonely tears in the corner as the big powerful flashy brothers get all the attention. But of course, they do very much have their place, and they are probably the go-to for a lot of people who don't have a metric ton of money to spend on their rig, or just going into PC gaming, or what have you. But unfortunately for those who perhaps would have gone for the GT 1030, which of course was launched last year, several manufacturers have been shipping a lower spec version of this graphics card. Now, according to Nvidia's own specifications, the reference 1030 has 2GB of GDDR5 memory running at 6008 MHz, making it GDDR5 effective across a 64-bit wide memory bus, and this had a memory bandwidth of 48GB a second. However, several models from fairly big manufacturers such as MSI, Pallet and Gigabyte are coming with DDR4 memory operating at 2100 MHz instead, and that comes to a memory bandwidth of 16.8GB a second, which is a pretty significant downgrade. However, the DDR4 base variants do consume 10 watts less than the reference model. But thankfully, at least some manufacturers do actually tell you this time around. Obviously, we had a recent case with Nvidia where there was a big difference and there was just no delineation between the two. But there is a D4 denotation on part of the model, and obviously it'll be on the box itself. But do be careful if you're looking at this for a low-end build, or perhaps recommending it to a friend, as not all manufacturers will tell you. For example, the Pallet ones don't mention it at all. So just be careful, and if it's consuming 10 watts less than you would expect, then it's probably the cut-down version. However, let's move on to our little motherboard segment, and the first one we're going to deal with is ASRock, or ASRock, depending on your choice of pronunciation. So this is a leak, so do take that for what it's worth. And this leak is thanks to video cards, and it is a mini ITX motherboards for the Ryzen 2000 processor. And it has 2 full-size DDR4 DIMMs, 4 SATA drives, 2 USB 2s, 2 USB 3s, and 1 USB 3.1 Type-C. There is a DisplayPort and HDMI, as well as M.2 slot. And speaking of motherboards, we have a reveal of one from Gigabyte for Coffee Lake. So we have B360 and H370 Gaming 3 motherboards, which again are for Coffee Lake. So naturally, a lot of stuff has been upgraded versus the previous iteration. For example, there is a BIOS option available, which can activate a power saving mode in which the motherboards will conserve up to 15% less power than older platforms, and that is a fairly significant upgrade, or downgrade, I guess you could say, because obviously power is important. Also improvement in the audio quality that you're going to be getting out of the motherboards as well, and we also have redesigned M2 heatsinks as well. And the boards just look in general rather shiny. However, let's finish things up with a visit to Console Town, as we have Spyro Reignited. So, we have had rumours and leaks and speculation and hype around this for ages, but now it's official. The Spyro Reignited Trilogy has been officially announced, which of course is a remake, or remastered, but it's a remake. Come on, let's be real, given how old the originals are. And we're going to be getting, as you might expect, all 3 games that most of us care about when it comes to Spyro. We've got Spyro, Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage, and Spyro Year of the Dragon, and these are going to be remade from the ground up. So we're also going to be seeing an update for controls, which is definitely good, because one thing I definitely don't miss about these type of platformers is how bad the controls are in comparison to modern games. So definitely nice to see that being implemented as well. They might say, okay, what this is actually coming out for? Well, it's actually going to be a timed exclusive for the PS4. It's coming out on that first, on September the 21st, but it is going to be coming out on Xbox One as well. Now, I wouldn't be surprised to see this coming to PC eventually, as of course we did eventually see a release date for Crash Bandicoot, the Insane Trilogy, for the PC, and of course the Switch as well, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a similar pattern for Spyro. So we're going to see analog stick movement being supported across all 3 games. Obviously all the cinematics have been recreated, and it's just going to be a ton of nostalgic fun. We're also going to see voice lines being recorded, and we're also going to be seeing the soundtrack being reimagined as well. So I'm pretty hyped about this, I'm not going to lie. Like, Spyro and Crash Bandicoot were some of my favourite games on the PS1. Like, when I think of my PS1 days, which is really when I started heavily getting into gaming. Like, yeah, I played the Mega Drive and the Master System and all that stuff growing up, and even played the Dreamcast a little bit as well, and the N64. But PS1 is really where it ignited for me, like the passion that obviously you see here before you today. And Spyro and Crash Bandicoot were a big part of that. So the Crash Bandicoot remaster was pretty damn good. Some changes I do kind of scratch my head about, like the change of the hitbox for Crash. But overall, I was really happy to replay those games again in better graphics. So hopefully we'll see a repeat of that with Spyro, I have to say. I'm definitely looking forward to this one. So forgive me for squeeing a little bit, but this is something I've been looking forward to for a while. Anyway, that's me done for this video. Thank you very much for watching. As always, your support is always appreciated. I'll see you next time.